Today on the Where Has Bandrew Been Says podcast, I will be discussing why Google and podcasting are not compatible, why you should be ID3 tagging your podcasts, and other stuff too, so go ahead and stick around. We are going to be starting with an update about YouTube podcasting because the feature is now live for content creators on the platform. In order to enable this feature, you just go to an existing playlist on your channel in YouTube Studio, you click on the options, and it says Mark as Podcast. When you click on this, now you have to add a show title, which is your podcast name. You add a description for your podcast. This will be a description of the show as a whole. And then you upload the square artwork, the 1x1, the 3x3, the square artwork. You know the ratio of what a square is. Once you've done that, you click the Done button, and now in the eyes of YouTube, you have a podcast. You are now officially a YouTube podcaster. The big selling point of this, or I shouldn't say the big selling point, but the selling point, is that now you have playlist-specific analytics. In the past, your analytics would be channel-wide. So if you are uploading short-form videos, long-form videos, podcasts, live streams, all those analytics would be aggregated. But now that you have created a podcast playlist, you can go into your YouTube Studio, hover over that playlist, click Analytics, and now you are getting analytics for the playlist. And now you are getting analytics for your podcast, for the videos within that playlist. All other content on your channel will be ignored. For podcast channels like mine, this is nothing new. I just upload full versions of this podcast, full episodes of this podcast. So when I go to my channel-wide analytics, I get this exact information, or almost this exact information. Because in the past, I had tried uploading clips to this channel alongside full episodes. I moved that to a new channel. We'll discuss that later. So it is a little bit skewed. If I want to make sure I am only capturing the analytics for the podcast episodes, I can look at this. Something I just thought of that I need to look into. This playlist has analytics. It has videos from multiple channels. This Bandrew Says podcast channel, and then I have episodes that were uploaded to the Clipscastage channel, which are included on this playlist. Is this playlist going to report analytics for videos that are hosted on separate channels? Or will it only report analytics? I'm going to test that. I will report back to you next week. And we will see what happens. Very interesting. I even made a note so I do not forget. You may be asking yourself, why is YouTube setting it up this way? Why are they making you create a playlist, mark it as a podcast, and that's how you get the analytics? That is how you get marked as a podcast. Why not allow podcasters to mark their entire channel as a podcast? If you are new to YouTube, YouTube has spent a lot of time and a lot of money generating new types of content, and they have pushed their creators to create these new forms of content. What do I mean? Shorts. That is the most recent one. They try to compete with TikTok. Maybe they're doing well, maybe they're not. They want you to create sub-1 minute videos and upload those to grow your channel. They even put little notices on the dashboard in your creator studio. Hey, we've noticed people who create shorts grow a lot more. You should consider doing it. Create shorts, creator. They also have live streams. They love live streams because it creates a lot of direct interaction with the YouTube channel owner and the audience. And that also means super chats. Super chats means YouTube gets money because they take 40% of super chats. I can't remember the breakdown of every different monetization strategy. They also want you to clip your podcast because Yes, a lot of us who consume podcasts see no issue watching an hour-long YouTube video. But a lot of YouTube viewers do not want to click on a 1-hour video. They may see a title that sounds very interesting. Google and podcasting are not compatible and think, ooh, that sounds so interesting. And then see how long the video is, 1 hour, and say, no thanks, skip right by it. So now on this channel that you created to upload your podcast, you do have your video podcasts, but you also have shorts, you also have live streams, you also have clips. You may also have membership posts. You may also have community posts. There are a bunch of different aspects to YouTube. So if you want to grow on the platform, they're probably expecting you to do all of these different types of content. And if you're a podcaster, you still want those podcast-specific analytics. So in my mind, that is why they have gone this route. But let's come back to reality. What is this entire announcement? What has actually happened? Why has it actually happened? All this is, you create a playlist, you mark it as a podcast. Where is that content available? Directly on YouTube, and in the future, on YouTube Music. That's it. It is not going to create an RSS feed. You will not be able to download YouTube videos or the audio from YouTube videos in whatever podcatcher you want. You are only going to be able to consume this exclusively on YouTube platforms or Google platforms, YouTube Music and YouTube proper. Let's revisit something that I have said in the past, because I know there are people who are deep in podcasting who are still screaming, that's not a podcast, that's a video, that's a show, don't call it a podcast. And as I've said in the past, yes, technically you are correct. However, to the average consumer, long-form spoken word content and podcast are terms that are synonymous. The average consumer thinks that long-form spoken word content is a podcast, whether it is distributed via an RSS feed or whether they are watching it on YouTube. Doesn't matter. To them, those are podcasts. So now that YouTube has rolled out this feature, you can mark your playlist as a podcast. People who are watching this content on YouTube may see a little note that says, podcast. This is a podcast. To the entire world, they will see YouTube podcasts. So what does that mean? That means that YouTube may have just become the largest podcast host in the entire world. I don't have the numbers, I don't have the statistics. But because they are able to redefine what a podcast is, or maybe they can't redefine it, maybe some people will say they have hijacked it. That's fair. They may have hijacked the term podcast, but now since podcasting and YouTube have become intertwined in the news, in the coverage, and on YouTube there will be this little marker saying this is a podcast. They are likely going to be able to go out and say, we have the most podcast listens. We have the most podcast shows hosted. We have the most podcast episodes hosted. We get the most podcast watch time. Are you a podcast advertiser? Well, what kind of analytics are you getting? Do you trust those? Do you know how much of your advertisement the listener is actually consuming? You don't? You just know that somebody downloaded the episode? Well, podcast advertiser, may I interest you in the type of analytics that we can offer? We know exactly how much time every single episode was watched. We know how much time every single advertisement in the show was consumed. We know if somebody had their eyes on the screen, if their mouse was scrolling around waiting for the skip ad. We know exactly what kind of person is watching the content. With your podcast advertising in the past, you just have to take the podcaster's word for it. Here, You get that information directly from us. We wouldn't lie to you. We have all the analytics. And I know that may sound jaded, that may seem very capitalistic, and it is. But YouTube and Google probably saw all the money being thrown around in podcasting over the last couple of years. They saw Joe Rogan get acquired for $100 million. They see all the money in podcast advertising. They see CPMs of $15, $20 for 1,000 views. What? On YouTube? $2. $2 for a CPM usually. They see that and probably think, I don't mind if I get into that industry. There's a lot of money. So with that perspective, what can we expect in the future? What are the takeaways here? Should we expect all of the podcast hosts to go out of business? Libsyn, Blueberry, Podbean, Spotify for Podcasters, Captivate, are they all going under because YouTube is going to take their lunch? All the new podcasters are jumping to YouTube to host their podcasts? No. I do not think that will happen. The reason I'm saying that, all of those podcast hosts give you an RSS feed. They allow you to distribute your podcast in the traditional way, the way that a podcast technically requires. My expectation, my forecast, you can take this to the bank. Call me out if this is wrong. I do not think YouTube will ever allow you to generate an RSS feed from these playlists. I do not think that YouTube or Google will ever allow you to send that RSS feed to anybody with a podcatcher and allow that listener to download your audio files. The reason being, that's not how Google functions. Google functions based on data collection, based on analytics. Google relies on that information. How much of each video have you consumed? How much of each ad have you consumed? When you're looking for a new piece of content, what are you hovering over? What are you most likely to click on next? They don't want you to have a longer view duration or a longer listen session on some random app. They want you to be on their platform for longer because that allows them to distribute more advertisements to you. That is the bottom line. And if you have downloaded an MP3 from a random podcatcher, you are not sending that data back to YouTube. So that is why I don't think YouTube launching quote-unquote podcasts means the end for podcast hosting. I don't think this replaces podcast hosting. I do not think YouTube is going to be the dominant force in podcasting. I think they may say they are. I think they may say, hey, we have the most podcast. We have the most podcast views. We have the most podcast view duration. So advertise with us. But I don't think podcast hosts are in danger. I don't think you'll ever get an RSS feed from YouTube. Everybody is safe, and people can continue to scream, that's not a podcast, that's a YouTube video. And technically, they'll be correct. That is all that I have on the YouTube podcasting story this week. I know I've been discussing this a lot recently, but my two worlds kind of collided, and it's very exciting for me. I started in podcasting, I moved and became a YouTuber, and now the two have merged. How cool is that for me? You may be sick of hearing about it. I'll try to dampen down how much I talk about it, and I will cover it when new features roll out, when we know a lot more. But now I have put out my forecast, my expectations, my speculation, and you can all point and laugh if I was wrong. I bet I wasn't, though. I'll put a penny on that bet because there's a lot of viewers and listeners. I don't want to owe you all tens of thousands of dollars. I don't have that kind of budget. I don't have the Google money. I don't have the podcasting CPM money. Now I want to go on a rant, and the rant has to do with ID3 tagging. Look out, sexy topic incoming. The bottom line is you should be verifying the features that are promised to you. Verify that they are working even if you don't typically use them, because I have been relying on a feature for years. I never verified it, and it has never been working. So I look like an absolute idiot. Let me walk you through this. You should be ID3 tagging every single one of your podcast's audio files. For years, when I consume a podcast, I consumed it via the Overcast app or Apple Podcasts. How is the data for those podcast episodes populated? From the RSS feed. Everything is good, great, grand because my RSS feed is full. All of the data is there, all of the artwork is there, and those podcast apps, those podcatchers populated it correctly. The issue arises when you do not have a podcast player or a podcast app that populates data from the RSS feed. I recently went down a rabbit hole trying to cut a few more cords to avoid distractions and get devices that are for dedicated things. That led to me picking up a SanDisk MP3 player, a little nugget right there. It is a little fella, and it does not have any connectivity, any Wi-Fi, so you have to download an MP3 file and drag it onto an SD card to listen to a show on this MP3 player. And there is the issue. When a show does not have ID3 tags, it would get lumped into a folder that says unknown show. And unless the audio file is titled descriptively, you don't know what you're about to listen to. And I noticed, hey, my show is filed in the unknown folder. What gives? So I emailed Libsyn support because I host my audio on Libsyn. Turns out, they do not ID3 tag M4A files. I use M4A, which if I'm remembering correctly is an AAC audio format, because it sounds better at lower bit rates. I was able to encode my stereo file at 128 kilobits per second. Sounded great. But unfortunately, their system doesn't encode ID3 tags onto M4A files. It does for MP3 files. So I had to come up with a solution here so that when I am putting an MP3 file or when anybody is downloading an MP3 file and maybe somebody comes across it years down the road, they know what the show is. The solution that I came up with is an application called Forecast. I already mentioned Overcast, which is coded and designed and made by Marco Arment. I hope I pronounced that right. Well, he also produced an app called Forecast. What that allows you to do is drop in a WAV file, add your artwork, add your podcast title, the episode title, all of that information, encode it into an MP3, and now the ID3 tags are baked in. There's an added benefit, though, and I am very excited about this because this issue that I ran into led me to adding a new feature to this podcast. It's super cool because I do it for the videos already. Timestamps, chapter markers. The Forecast app, which unfortunately is only available for Mac, has chapter markers, so I can put chapter markers into my MP3 file. Now, that's not going to be functional for players like this SanDisk because they don't have chapter marker support, but on iPods, because yes, I am using an iPod still, or now, or on Overcast or Apple Podcasts, if they have the chapter marker functionality enabled, you can see that. So the entire purpose of me sharing this is twofold. If you are listening to this in a podcatcher, enjoy the chapter markers. You can just hit the forward arrow if you don't care what I'm talking about. Secondly, you should be verifying the features that you are promised, because sometimes there may be some kind of technical issue that leads to those features not working. Maybe there's an issue with the file format that you're uploading. Maybe there's an issue with the system that they need to fix. So verify they're working. And when there's an issue, it doesn't always mean it's a bad thing because it could lead to some cool new discoveries. That is my rant. I did have to up, one little side note, I did have to up not the sample rate. Why can't I think? I just said this word. I had to jump up from 128 kilobits per second to 160 kilobits per second for the MP3 to get the same audio quality. It's amazing how much worse the MP3 file sounded. So it may be a larger file size podcast. I apologize for that, but I want the audio quality to still be there. That's it for the rant. Now let's talk about what I've been testing. I'm not going to say the thing. You could be watching it. That's right. As I alluded to earlier in the episode, I launched a Clips channel. I did it in secret. I did it in private because I wanted to do an experiment. Back in February, still sticking to the R, I made the decision, I'm gonna try starting a Clips channel. I'm going to pull clips from every single episode and upload one video a day for at least a month. It is just over a month now, and I just surpassed 100 subscribers on the channel, all through organic growth. I did not promote it anywhere. I did not post a video anywhere. I did not tell anybody about it. Just organic, algorithmic growth. 100 subs in less than a month. Over a month. Just over a month. This was a super useful exercise, expertise. It was a useful exercise for me. The reason being, I may think, oh, that was a great episode, and then move on. But then going back a year and a half, 2 years later, and revisiting those episodes, yikes. Yikes! I have come a long way from 2 years ago. But it also helped me identify what pieces of content have stood the test of time. What type of content still has value 2 years, 3 years later? Because if a piece of content is only valuable for 2 months, maybe I should produce less of that and focus more on stuff that has a longer legs on it. That sounds a bit weird. That has longer life to it, that is evergreen. I don't want to spend my limited time on this planet, the limited time that I have, every single Sunday, making podcasts that are useful and viewable and listenable to for a month, and then they just get forgotten. I want to invest my time appropriately and make sure the content that I am producing is valuable. And it will be valuable a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And that's what this entire exercise has taught me. What type of content is valuable? What type of content will stand the test of time? A lot of the FAQ stuff, a lot of the Ask Bandrew stuff, a lot of the tests that I do, a lot of the discussions about audio production. Surprise, surprise, the stuff that doesn't change every week with the news cycle is the stuff that has legs, the stuff that will last a long time. I also noticed my presentation style has gotten a lot better. For a while, God, it just sounded like I was so depressed. It was so hard to make it through some of those episodes to try to clip stuff. It was rough. So if you want to check out the Clips channel, it is titled Clipscastage. And it doesn't just have clips from this channel, but that is the main source for clips. When there's something of interest on the Podcastage channel where I end up doing an outtake, I may upload it over there, but it is mainly clips from this channel, and I will expand it a bit more. I have well over 100 videos that I need to schedule out because I have gone back through maybe episode 250. So almost 100 episodes I have clipped in. Boy, oh boy. The presentation style, the production style, all of it has changed drastically. And now let's jump to my favorite part of the show, the Ask Bandrew segment. Welcome back to the Ask Bandrew segment, the segment where you ask me, Bandrew, and I try to answer you, and then I exploit your questions for content, and then years later, clip it and upload it to exploit it a second time. Give me all your questions so I can exploit you for content for years to come. Mwahahaha. As though you get nothing of I spend time answering your question. Okay, if you want to send in a question, go to askbandrew.com. Instructions on how to send in audio, video, and text. I do prefer audio and video because then I don't have to read. You get to hear yourself. People get to hear a break from me, and it's wonderful. AskBandrew.com. First submission comes from Nico from France. Take it away, Nico from France.
Hi Bandrew, it's Nico from France. I'm using an AKG D5 running into an Audient ID4 and I'm quite happy of the sound I get for YouTube videos and podcasts. But I'd like to do some audio fictions, so I think I should move into the condenser world. But my issue is that my room is not treated and cannot be really treated. So I'm thinking about Handheld Condenser mic or SDC mic. Which one is better for my situation? Something like the Rode M2 or something like the AKG P170? Should I stay in the dynamic world or should I go to the condenser world? What do you think? Should I stay or should I go? Thanks for all that you do for the audio world. See you, Bandrew.
Nico from France, thank you very much for the voice submission. I really do appreciate it. Currently, you are using a dynamic microphone in an untreated space. You're diving into the voiceover realm, so you want a condenser microphone, but you're not sure should you get a small diaphragm condenser or a handheld condenser. Good news, bad news. Good news, I am going to do a quick test for you. Bad news, I could not find the Rode M2, and I have never used the AKG P170. So currently, I am using the AKG D5, which is a handheld dynamic microphone. It is a very bright handheld dynamic microphone, and that is what I've been speaking into, running into the Focusrite 18i20 2nd Gen 24-bit 48 kilohertz with my gain set nearly at 100%. That's what you've been listening to. Now I am on the Audio-Technica AT2010, which is a handheld condenser mic. This costs, I think, $110. Because I couldn't find the Rode M2, I figured, hey, this one's a similar price. Let's compare the AKG D5 to this. So here is how this is sounding. Much brighter, much more natural sounding to my ears compared to the specific microphone you're using. I dropped my gain to 4 o'clock from around 5 o'clock. Still a quiet microphone, especially for a condenser. This is going to have a higher self-noise compared to a large diaphragm condenser as well, but there you go. This is what a handheld condenser sounds like compared to a handheld dynamic. Now I am on the SE Electronics SE7. This costs $120, somewhere around there. This is a typical small diaphragm condenser. I am the same distance. I was able to drop my gain to about 2 o'clock, so the sensitivity on this is significantly higher than the handheld mics that are designed to be used on stage. As far as the tonal differences, this is the most natural sounding to me. It doesn't have that same boost that you hear on the handheld condenser or the handheld dynamic because it's not designed to be used amongst a large mix. Both the AT2010 and the AKG D5 are meant to be used in live situations. Sound reinforcement, you have a lot of instrumentation going on, so they design the frequency response to work well in that situation. With an SDC, this is designed typically to be used in a studio, and it's meant to sound a bit flatter. So if you're going for that raw, just flat neutral sound, this is going to be the route to go. However, I do think it picks up a bit more room tone. So if you're looking for a microphone solely based on the tone and you want a natural tone, the SE-V7 or a small diaphragm condenser would probably be my pick. But if you're also including the rejection characteristics, how much room tone, how much background noise, how much reverb the microphone rejects, I found the SDC in this situation to be slightly worse compared to the microphones that are designed to be used in less ideal situations. I hope that was helpful in your decision between handheld dynamic, handheld condenser, and small diaphragm condenser. Maybe what you could do is invest a little bit of your budget into some sound panels or some sound blankets, and you could lay those blankets down or those towels down on your desk to reduce the amount of reflections off of that hard surface, and that would yield a better result. Now let me go ahead and give you the advice that nobody searching for gear wants to hear. You do not need to buy more equipment. The audio that you're getting out of whatever microphone you're using, in this specific case the AKG-D5, that's more than sufficient. Unless you are doing voiceover for some massive multinational corporation and it is a huge advertising budget, a dynamic microphone will be fine. A handheld condenser will be fine. An SDC will be fine. An LDC will be fine. So unless you're making money with it, you do not need to upgrade. Unless you have very picky clients, chances are you do not need to upgrade. Try giving it a go with the microphone that you have. See how you enjoy it. See what kind of feedback you get from the client that you're recording for. Or if you're recording for yourself and doing videos online, see what kind of feedback you get from the audience. Do they think, oh my God, this sounds so bad, and leave you a bunch of mean comments? Then perhaps upgrade. But if you use the gear that you have and nobody says a darn thing, I think you'll find you didn't need to spend the money. There you go. Hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully that gave you some idea which route to go. Best of luck on your decision on whether to go for a dynamic, handheld condenser, or SDC. Next, we have a written email from Zurin, and he says, "Hello, Bandrew. I'm Zurin from Germany, and I have 2 questions again. Number 1, if you do the music test of a microphone with the electric guitar, I often can barely hear a difference to other microphones or something sounding not so good if I don't have direct comparison. Could you include something like direct comparisons with how the electric guitar sounds when it is connected directly to an interface? 2, this is a bit of a specific question, but what are the best and worst microphones you have reviewed in every single category from the build quality to resonance tap test and the music test? If the answer is too much for the podcast, what about a video about it? Thanks for all of your effort to bring us. You're very welcome. And would it be possible to show the BSP video how my name is written? I saw some interesting ways of spelling it in the comments." Zurin, ask and ye shall receive. Up on the screen if you are watching is how you spell Zurin's name. I hope I am pronouncing your name correctly. On to your first question. Why don't I have a direct A-B comparison between the mic'd up guitar cab and a DI signal? Because I don't think there would be much value there. A DI guitar signal is so drastically different from a mic'd up guitar cab that it's not really comparable. The sound is so different that nobody would say, oh, I hear this minor difference between these frequencies, because the DI signal is just the output from the guitar pickups. It doesn't have any amp simulators. It doesn't have any distortion. It has none of that. It is just the strings vibrating, being picked up by the magnets, turned into electricity, and then going out through the guitar cable into the DI signal, the DI input of the audio interface. The other side, it goes out through the strings vibrating into the pickups, out into a distortion pedal, out through an overdrive pedal, then into a guitar amp, then out through the speaker output into a speaker, which has its own tone, and then that is recorded with the microphone. In order for a direct A-B comparison to be useful, I would need to have a baseline microphone on every single mic, every single review that I do. Probably an SM57. Why don't I do that even though I know it would be more useful? Time. I don't have the time to do that. My video reviews already take 15 to 20 hours to produce, and I struggle to get a video out every single week, as seen by the fact that I missed multiple release dates this year already. I struggle to get the videos out as they are. Adding additional testing, which needs to be very stringent and very strict with mic placement, gain settings, all of that, level matching, would easily add an additional 2-3 hours to the review if I wanted to do it properly. So that's why I don't do that. I do that during the Versus series because That's not something that adds 2 to 3 hours of production time to every single week. So if you want a Versus series, recommend them. I have not done one in a while. Go ahead and leave comments on the last Versus series, or leave a comment on this video. Hey, compare these two microphones. And then you'll get that direct A/B comparison of mic 1 to mic 2 on the same sound source. And that is a useful comparison. The speaker cab and a DI signal, I don't think there would be much use to that comparison. Then on to your second question. What are the best microphones in different categories? Build quality, resonance, music. That is difficult and sometimes impossible to answer. I have been considering doing this. It is in my little production notebook. What is the best handling noise? What is the best wind protection? What is the best resonance? Those are all things that can be easily, well, not easily, but can be tested and quantified. You just need to determine a repeatable testing methodology, and I have ideas on certain tests that I could do. Others I do not know the answer to yet. But with those, yes, I have plans to make videos on that, especially for handheld microphones for stage use. What's the best with wind protection? What's the best with plosive rejection? What's the best with handling noise? Those are things I can measure, I can test. I just need to find ways to repeatably do those tests. Otherwise, how strong I am tapping a microphone might vary. So I want to do those, just very difficult to do it properly. When it comes to music, when it comes to what's the best microphone for electric guitar, for acoustic guitar, for spoken word, for singing, that's much more subjective. And that would need to be one of those videos like the best podcasting microphones that I did, and I compared 14 podcast microphones. Then I have to put the disclaimer, this is all my opinion. Disagree with me if you want. But much more subjective there. And I can't give you an answer to any of those questions right now because I don't have it. I could say, the Earthworks, the big steel one, SR314 did great with handling noise rejection. Do I know that it's the best? No. I don't know that it's the best. I just subjectively or anecdotally had a very good experience with rejecting handling noise with that microphone. So thank you very much for the email. I appreciate you. And that is it for this episode. I'm happy to be back. Sorry I missed a couple of weeks. 2 weeks ago, I needed an extra full day of production for the NT1 video. That video took well over 20 hours, and I still missed stuff. Then last week, I made the decision, I want a down day. I want a proper sit on my rear end, do nothing day. And it was great. It was great. So that is why I missed 2 weeks. And I did hear Darren O'Neill say, oh yeah, maybe he got the taste of sitting on your rear end and having a week off, and then that draw to that doing nothing is strong. He's not wrong. He's not far off, because goodness gracious, the idea of just having another sit on my rear end, do nothing day sounds pretty sweet. But nay, I am back. I am back in the saddle again. And now I've been copyright struck on YouTube. That's another downside to podcasting on YouTube. You get copyright strikes. That is all that I have for you today. Nothing else to talk about. No other rants. I will have some what I've been testing next week. Hint, hint. New computer finally, which is why there's an iMac behind me. Finally upgraded. 6 years later. Oh, we'll see how it goes. It had a rocky start, but I want to use it before I report on it. Okay, thank you for coming by this week. I apologize for missing you. Thank you for coming back, even though I did miss a few episodes. You are a beautiful and wonderful human being. I hope you had an amazing 2 weeks prior, and I hope that you have an amazing upcoming week. Do not work too hard. Do not overconsume coffee. Get a good night's rest. Read a book. Unplug from the internet. Take off the smartwatch. Use an iPod instead of an iPhone. And turn off the Wi-Fi so you don't have this constant ding, 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 ding. That's my recommendation. That's what I do. All right. I hope you have an amazing Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and next Sunday I will talk at you. I love you so much. You're beautiful. Talk to you then. Bye-bye. Whoa, whoa. Boop.
This has been a Geeks Rising production. Your executive producer is Bandrew Scott. For more information, head over to www.geeksrising.com.